Hello NaNoWriMoers, it's day 11 and it's been a hell of a day. So some stuff's been happening in my life that has confluenced into some really just irritating couple of days, and it's entirely possible that's been reflective in the ultra short and clipped vlogs I've been putting out. But it got me thinking about something actually related to NaNoWriMo and writing, not just stuff I've seen like people talking about in NaNoWriMo, the community, but also like on Twitter. And I thought I would just like sit down and have like a little bit of a chat about imposter syndrome and feelings of inadequacy. I suspect that we all have these lulls where we start to doubt ourselves, or I suspect it's very common and maybe more common for some people than others. If you are at all struggling with feelings of self-doubt or inadequacy, or if you're struggling to like stick with your NaNoWriMo project because of anxiety, maybe keep watching. I really probably should have taken notes for this, but I'm just going to go off the cuff. It's the third time I've tried to film it, so we shall see how it goes. So even though I've written several novels and I've been doing NaNoWriMo a lot, I definitely still struggle with feelings of inadequacy. Some of that has to do with, I think, the capitalist culture that I have grown up in, and basically if you're not making a lot of money, then you're failing. I mean, that's really the American dream right there. The fact that I'm not making a ton of money right now weighs on me quite a lot. And for most of us, writing is not a get-rich-quick method of work. But that wouldn't weigh so heavily if, you know, I didn't also struggle with feelings of artistic inadequacy as well. It's kind of just like a 1-2 punch of a good way to get you depressed. And I'm not feeling that right now. I'm actually this is one of the chillest NaNoWriMos I have ever done. Like, I'm really not struggling with my word count. I haven't actually missed a single day of writing. I did have a couple of like lower word count days, but even my lower word count days weren't all that low. You know, one 250 word day is the worst I've done, and that's not too bad. I definitely had a couple of days last year where I only wrote like a sentence just because I really wanted to update my word count for 30 days in the month, because you get a little badge on the website. So I would force myself to write a sentence. That's not happening right now. But I know what's happening for some people. I know some of you are struggling with feelings of inadequacy, feelings of anxiety. I know that some of you are struggling to keep working on your book, that you're running into writer's block, essentially, that maybe you've written yourself into a corner and you don't know how to get out, or you've deviated from your outline and now you don't know what to do, and you're thinking maybe you should scrap everything you've written so far, or maybe you should scrap the entire idea of writing a novel. I know that that is happening, and those are feelings that I have definitely had myself, and I think we all have them. So I'm going to deviate here and talk to you about why it's been a little stressful in my life lately. Sometime around the end of, I actually don't remember, maybe it was the end of September or so, I was working on some amalgamation of Blood and Bone 4. I was struggling with the book. It felt like it was a really long way away from being finished, and it was, because I probably had like 60,000 words left to write of it, which is a long way away. I wasn't earning a lot of money. I'm not. I'm in a really low period of royalties right now just because I haven't published anything since January, and my January release got real fucked up. So it hasn't sold very well this year. As a member of a hyper-capitalist society, not earning money on what you're doing is stressful. Or at least it is for me. That stress of failure feeds into any anxiety you might have about your creative worth and your creative talent. And so basically what I had is a situation where I wasn't making money off what I was doing, and I was struggling to get what I was doing done, and I was working really slowly, and I felt like a hack, and it just felt like there was no way out of the hole. Also, I accumulated a ton of debt last year because of a living situation that went horribly bad. Essentially, I moved in with some friends, and we were going to split the rent, and it was going to be pretty inexpensive. And then one of those friends turned out to be a lying, cheating, horrible person who we had to kick out and kick off the lease. And so then all of our rents went way up. And yeah, I'm trying to pay off all the debt I accumulated last year, which is a hefty portion. And so that, that feeds into that anxiety, right? And so in the lull and in a panic, I started just applying for jobs. Big box stores in my town, like World Market and Barnes and Nobles and Target, that kind of stuff. And I did it because it was a form of control. I can't control my royalties. I can't control who and how many people buy my book. There's things you can do, obviously, to influence sales, but you can't control it. You don't have a set 20 hours a week where you're earning $11 an hour and you're gonna get that paycheck bi-monthly, like you cannot control it to that degree. So it felt productive in the midst of my, I'm not a good writer, I'm never gonna make a living as an author, thoughts, spiral, writer's block, etc., to apply for other jobs. And it was also safe because I spent a couple of years before I started writing, and in the midst of writing my first novel, aggressively applying for part-time jobs in this town because I needed a job. I just moved back and I needed a job and I couldn't get anything, and that's really what spurred me to write. It was a solid control thing. I could apply for a job that would have a paycheck, and I could trick myself into thinking I was doing something productive, secure in the knowledge that no one would ever call me back because no one ever has. Like, in 2 years of aggressively trying to find a job while I was writing my first novel, I think I went on 2 interviews and I didn't get a job. Admittedly, this was 2012, which was like the year of huge unemployment in the United States. So there were other factors. So I did this, and just that act of like applying for a bunch of these jobs eased some of the anxiety in me. And that helped me get back on track writing the book. And obviously I finished writing the draft of Blood and Bone 4, but there was a complication in that 2 weeks ago, one of those businesses called me back and asked for an interview. And it's like, well, shit. How do you say no, again, to that guaranteed 20 hours a week, guaranteed bi-monthly paycheck, irregardless of whether or not you want it? Because technically Blood and Bone 4 isn't ready to be published yet. So I don't know for sure how well it's going to sell, or if it's going to do well, or if it's going to tank like my last book. So there's risk in not pursuing that job and just focusing on the writing. I'm sorry this is going on so long. It's what you get for a bunch of short vlogs where I say nothing. I started going through the steps of, I had to buy interview clothes. I had to go to the interview. I had to buy interview shoes, which actually I really like the shoes I bought, so I'm not too upset about that, even though I didn't really have the money to buy any of these things. I went on the interview. I went through the hassle of submitting references, which, because I haven't done a whole lot of steady work, I really don't have. And it's been a hassle because, like, first they didn't have my references, so I had to email them. And then there was like some crosswire and they didn't get the references that I emailed. So they called, and then I had to call them back, and then I had to submit them again. And then I had to call them back. And then the hiring person wanted me to reapply for the job. So I had to do that. And then they've been calling my references, they've only gotten a hold of one of them, and they have to talk to 2 before they can hire me. And they called one of them who's a teacher during school hours, so she didn't even check her phone. Even though I requested that, they call her after school hours because she is a teacher, and I gave them a time frame. They still didn't do that. And so this has been going on. I've been like playing phone tag with these people for the last week. And this is for a part-time barista position that's during the holidays. And that's the only reason I'm actually like continuing to go through with it, because it's a part-time, it's only supposed to be for 8 weeks. So I'm thinking, okay, you got yourself into this mess. You can work for 8 weeks part-time. You can use it as some like research for another barista character. Not that I really need more of those in my books. And then you'll be done. And you'll learn from this. AKA, you won't start panic applying for jobs just because you have writer's block again. Because that's what I did. And now I'm in this situation where I don't really want the job, but my mother is constantly lecturing me about not closing doors and not being rude and finishing what you start. Because I do have a habit of like starting projects and not finishing them. But at the same time, I absolutely hate working with the public, which is why I actually do like writing. Even though I don't always enjoy the process of writing, I like writing as a job, if that makes sense, because I can be a hermit who just lives on social media and do my work. So for the last 2 mornings, I've been concerned about this hiring manager, calling me in the morning, because she tends to call in the morning, and me missing the call. So I've been only getting a couple of hours of sleep, and then I've been just awake, waiting to see if I get a call. And she hasn't called me either morning. Then she called me this afternoon. Of course. And it's just like irritating, because I don't want the job, but also I feel like a fool if I don't take the job. And I have no one to blame for getting myself into this situation other than myself, because I had this moment where I didn't feel like I could be a writer. And so I panic applied for the position. That's the core, that's the nugget of what I'm getting at. We all have writer's block. We all go through these moments of anxiety thinking the book's not good, or what we're writing is garbage, or we can't write, or we can't do this for a job, or we can't finish this project, or this book isn't good enough to be finished. We all have those moments. I literally had one of those moments like 6 weeks ago, and it's completely upturned my life a little bit. The last thing you should do if you have those anxieties, if you have those second doubts, self-doubt, second thoughts, there we go, mixing our phrases. The last thing you should do is actually stop writing. The last thing you should do is actually scrap the book. The reality is that, like, as an author, a lot of times you'll start writing something and you'll realize that you've made a misstep somewhere, maybe with your point of view character, or where you started the book, or the plot, or something. Something's wrong, or the structure's wrong, and you do need to scrap it and start over. But knowing when that is going to be most effective or most efficient, or where you should really do that, does take some practice to recognize those places. I do see my writer friends who are writers who write all the time. This crops up. They'll be like, I had to scrap the first 25,000 words of what I just wrote and start over. But if this is like your first really serious NaNoWriMo, or your first really serious novel, you are not at that place to decide that. You're still at the place where you need to learn the skills to start and finish a project. Not figure out how to polish that project, not figure out how to make that project really good. You're still in the stages of just getting it written. And that's what NaNoWriMo is really all about. It's getting it written. So if you're starting to I just need a different phrase. If you're starting to have self-doubts, or feeling anxiety that you're an imposter, that you can't do this, stop. Shut up that little voice. Stop stressing out about it, because it's really not that stressful. It's really not. Unless your mortgage payment depends on you getting this book published. It's not life or death. Chill out, make yourself a cup of tea, and then just keep writing. And maybe the second half doesn't match the first half. That's not the point for you right now. The point for you is to actually write those 50,000 words and just finish them. That's where you're at. If you're having doubts about, like, maybe my characters aren't good enough, or maybe this plot's not quite working, that's your editor, your inner editor talking. Which is fine, unless it's stopping you from finishing something. And if it's making you doubt whether or not you can do NaNoWriMo, if it's making you feel like maybe you don't have what it takes to cut it as a writer, then it's preventing you from finishing NaNoWriMo. Put some duct tape over its mouth, shove it in a closet, and lock the door. You can deal with structure, you can deal with fleshing out your characters, you can deal with plot holes later. You can't fix any of those elements, though, if you can't start and finish something. This is just like, note to self, finish what you started, even if it means finishing that job that you applied for that you don't want. I've now, like, talked myself into continuing this hassle of getting this part-time job. Anyways, I've rambled on way too long here. I was hoping that this would take 5 minutes. It's like 22. I'm gonna have to cut this down way far. And also, I need to get writing. Oh my god. I hope this was inspiring. I don't know. I was gonna, like, tack on some stuff about me writing, but let's just call this a NaNoWriMo Chat. I mean, there's nothing I can show you that you haven't already seen in the first 10 days of NaNoWriMo. I'm gonna go write for an hour, get at least 2,000 words written. I'm still working on the sci-fi story. I can guarantee I'm at least going to get that much done today. Maybe a little bit more. Who knows? I actually really like the sci-fi story. And I'm also going to go drink a ton of coffee because I have not had enough coffee yet. I hope all of you stick with it and finish NaNoWriMo. And I'll see you tomorrow.